Call the meeting to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amy, would you take roll call, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Dipto,
Here.
Commissioner Cronin. Here. Commissioner Wire,
Here.
Commissioner Shaw,
Here.
and Mr. Mayor Lindsay.
Here. You have before you the agenda for today, and say this evening.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 1, strategic plan progress update. Jameson, you want to take that one away?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are coming to the end of the third quarter of the year here soon, so we want to give an update on the progress for our strategic plan since our last planning meeting. So we have 2 handouts that are in the agenda packet. One provides more of a detailed look at the strategies, where they're at, which ones are prioritized, which ones are on track, which ones aren't started yet. And then I'm going to be getting over the summary sheet here, which is the second attachment that was in there. We have 5 pillars to our strategic plan. The first is on prioritizing community engagement, and this is definitely a pillar we've spent a lot of activity over the last few months. On the communications, we've had a lot of improvements. Website is being centralized as a primary means of communication. And I know we said this before, but we keep repeating it. It's very important. The website's the central means, and everything else that we do is referring users back to our website. It doesn't mean that we're not doing anything else. We are still doing social media posts and text alerts and press releases more than we have in the past. But we're trying to refer everything back to that website. So if people have a question or if they want to find more information, they know the website is the place to go. We've also added a translator to the website. So that translates all web content. So for users who speak other languages or whose English is not their first language, that translator can greatly assist them as they're accessing our website. It doesn't translate PDF documents, as that's a different, that's that part of the capability that's in there, but it does translate anything that is content-wise on the website. I'll note that in the future, we are looking at having a refresh of our website. It comes within our contract with Civic Plus. So that'd be either end of this year, beginning of next year. It won't look completely different, but you'll start seeing some small changes as far as usability of how the website goes. And then we've recently rolled out the mobile app for our city of Madison SD, available in the app stores. This takes our website, makes it user friendly. It takes some of the high points from what's needed, what people go to in the website, and makes it easy to use on your device. So if you haven't taken a look yet, we just rolled that out last week. Was it, Savannah? That was just rolled out last week, and I encourage you to download it on your phone and take a look to see how that app is working.
Do we know how many people downloaded it?
Not yet. We don't have direct access to those numbers, but we can get them from Civic Plus.
I'll go through the branding as well. So on the branding side, we've established the brand standards a couple months ago to have that common brand for the city. And we're also looking to assist the Chamber and the LAIC to work on their branding because they've expressed an interest in looking at their logos and maybe updating them. We're just looking to see what options are out there. I'll pause there. Any questions on communications or branding efforts? Okay. Community engagement. So some of these strategies that we've been working on, we've started some new engagement events with myself as the administrator. We had the Java with Jameson and the Join Jameson. We have very low attendance to both of those. So we're reevaluating to see if there's tweaks we can make to improve the attendance and the usability of those. So we're looking at changing the locations to be more public areas. So rather than trying to get the word out and convincing people to come to us to engage, we're going to try to schedule some in more public locations so we can go to the people. The first one we're looking at, Savannah, is where again?
2nd Street Diner.
At 2nd Street Diner. So we'll meet in their side room there and from 8 to 10 p.m. on the
8 to 10 a.m.
AM.
on the 16th.
8 to 10 a.m. on the 16th. And the second change we're making is bring some of the elected officials in. So Dre and the mayor will be joining us for that one on the morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Hoping to get some more attendance there. And as I said before, we'll do a few more of those. And if we still aren't seeing a high attendance, that's okay. The people know where to get a hold of us, and we'll keep working on their engagement initiatives. We'll also note that we're looking at starting a state of the city address to be held by the mayor, looking at doing that in January of 25, once we are able to get into our new building. MadisonSD.com is something that was listed in the strategic plan. It's a web asset that's privately owned. So it's not something that we had direct control over, but we were collaborating with the site owners so that we could try to figure out what to do with that website. It is something that many users felt that was a city asset. If you were doing searches or Googling for something, that website might pop up and people thought that was an outdated city asset. It's not. So we are collaborating with the owner to update and modernize that. At this point, we do have some access to it and the owner has been open to letting the city start updating content and make changes to the website. So we, in the strategic planning implementation group, have decided we'd like to use that as a central hub so we can connect people to all of the main partners in the community, as well as offer some additional resources. One example is we developed a housing list that is on our website, the city website currently. It offers easy access to a number of housing providers in town, property management companies, rentals, things like that. I mean, that's something that we probably will move over to Madison SD at some point, since that's more of a private side of the market type thing. And then the last thing I've commented on under this pillar is there is a few strategies in the plan about working on downtown and creating some sense of place and community gathering space in the downtown area. And so our group's kind of identified Library Park as a primary gathering space that could be enhanced and further developed as a city center within the city. So that's just simply identification at this point. There hasn't been any actions that people would see, but we know that that's an area we can move forward with and having some efforts to enhance the downtown. Okay, seeing no questions, I'll move into the second pillar. Collaboration, so this focuses on ways that we interact with our partners and they interact with each other. A couple things to note when that are related to both Dakota State and Madison Central. We're exploring the ability to place banners or flags from those entities during key events. Throughout the year, we have American flags placed throughout the community, particularly downtown. And so we're looking at what it would take to have some flags or banners done for those events as well. We're also looking at having each of those entities be able to provide a report to the city commission once or twice a year during our commission meetings to further strengthen those ties. Specific to DSU, we had earlier in the year, we had some conversations over whether we could have a pilot program for students to provide technology assistance to our businesses in the community. We also spoke about other communities that are similar in size and have universities that we could use to provide some beneficial comparisons. It's always useful to have those peer institutions and peer communities. These are conversations we had earlier in the year, and there hasn't been any progress on them over the last 3 months. So those are things I identified that need to be picked up again. And then in relation to Lake County and LAIC, we had submitted a grant application for some federal funding to assist with the bypass reconstruction. This year, last year, we didn't make it through round one before we were turned down. And this year we have made it through round one. I don't know what the rest of that process looks like. It is a federal funding avenue, so it could take a long time. And we know it's all subject to federal government, but we are optimistic that that application can continue through to get some funding. Any questions?
The confidence levels.
I'm optimistic. Yeah, I think I'm very confident in our application and the need for the project. I'm probably less optimistic in timing from federal government because this is all dependent on their funding packages and Congress getting bills passed and whatnot. So that's always a chaotic environment, but as far as our application goes, I'm confident.
So with the past transition to a city entity then, like we had talked about?
Yeah, great question. And that's a good reminder for the group. So I'm gonna say a year and a half ago, we had signed an agreement with the county that said, if we work together to improve the bypass, and if we improve the half-mile of road by the airport, if those two areas were fixed up, we would swap ownership. So we would own the 2 miles of the bypass and they'd own the half-mile up at the airport. We've updated the airport road, and so now we can work collaboratively with the county to get the bypass updated. Once that's complete, we would be switching ownership.
Right, so it's still contingent on this federal funding.
Yeah, yes. Any other questions?
And the other thing is, and that is we had to run that basically with the county. The county's a sponsor on that because it's county road.
Yes.
So.
I'll move into the critical needs. We've noted the LAIC is continuing progress towards the early learning center. You can see some actions coming forward on your next regular agenda in a week. They are looking to take ownership of the property as that's been discussed on Highland Avenue there, and they would select to break ground this fall on building their building. So they've made great progress on the fundraising and financing for their new facility. We are still in designs for reconstruction of Egan Avenue. This is Egan Avenue north of the highway. Construction to occur in 25 and 26. We have secured financing through SRF. We haven't moved forward with approval on some of that side because we're also looking at financing through RD. And so if USDA is able to give us better financing, we might consider doing that instead of SRF funding. And then just a note of infrastructure construction that's occurred throughout the summer. Shouldn't be anything new here. We discussed this enough at our meetings, but we've had lots of progress on our SRF and RD projects, as well as a few other infrastructure improvements. All noted in our strategic plan for critical needs. I'll move on to quality of life. I've worked with the chamber to start discussions with downtown business owners on how to create an entity that is supporting of the downtown. We met with them once, and then our second meeting is going to be this week, I believe. And so that's just having discussion over how they would like to see support from each other and from the city and the community. At this point, I envision that likely will come through as a chamber committee. The chamber's got a few committees already, and so this would be a new committee that focuses on downtown activities and support for those businesses. Quite a few other cities, especially larger ones, have either an independent entity supporting the downtown or one through their chamber. And so I feel like this is a need that we can certainly meet. Recreation trail, here's some new information. We just found out last week, Thursday or Friday, that the application to develop a trail around the fishing pond is unsuccessful, unfortunately. So that was the second year of applying for that. I'm gonna circle back to that in just a couple seconds. I'll just finish this pillar out. I'll also note that the Lake Madison Development Association is moving forward with the creation of a rec trail master plans. That is gonna be outside of the city, but they are one of our partners through our strategic planning efforts here, and we wanted to make that note. What's that group called? Lake Madison Development Association, LMDA. And then bathrooms at parks. Parks are a big part of our quality of life, and the bathrooms at Memorial and Tutland Parks are nearing completion. We made good progress on those.
I'm glad we went with that change.
They look nice. So I'll circle back to the trail development because this is definitely an area I'd like some more direction. We've applied for 2 years now for funding to construct a trail around the new fishing pond. We think that'd be a really great improvement to the community. The application was for some kind of hard pavement surfacing and would go around the pond. I know that the cost of that, we are eligible to apply for this grants for up to 80%. This year, we only applied for up to 70% because we knew it was a big ask. And I feel like it still is more than they generally award to these projects. So, and then another consideration that we learned when we were working with, I think it's Game Fish and Parks on this is they look more towards projects that are connecting things rather than further developing things. So we fall in the latter category. We've got a site we want to develop. We want to make it a nature area, recreation area, and they really like to see rec trails made to connect areas of communities together, which I certainly see the reasoning there. So looking for direction, especially as we're coming up on some budgeting discussions over the next month. If you would like to see us apply for that again in the future, if you would like to see us put aside some funds to develop a trail ourselves next year, or if you'd like to see us do nothing and just leave the site as it is. We could, like I said, set aside funds to do it ourselves, as we had put in the application with a nice paved trail all the way around the pond. Or we could also look at doing a gravel path or a dirt path or something a little bit easier too, and develop it more like a nature area. Maybe similar to Jerry Maloney, which is just grass up there too. But, so definitely some options there. And in the future, since we have a rec trail master plan, if we don't apply for that site, we can look at applying for other areas to connect the community more, which is what they're kind of in line with. They get a lot of applications, it seems like the last few years, it used to be, they didn't get a ton. And I think after COVID, a lot of communities are kind of focused on some of the outdoor recreation opportunities.
So you get a list of what applications were accepted?
I haven't yet. At some point, I would imagine in the near future, there'll probably be a press release announcing which
To
communities.
understand
Yeah.
what they're looking for.
Yeah, it is challenging for GFP to award many of these. The funding available for this program hasn't increased the last several years, but the demand for the programs increased as well as the cost. So each year they're able to fund less projects as those costs continue to rise.
Well, what will be asking for, James, and how much money?
I want to say, well, I wish Barb was here. I'm gonna say 380,000.
We were asking for.
I think so. I don't know if anybody here knows what that number was or doesn't look like it. I think they said that generally their highest award in the past is in the 250,000, so we are beyond what they've, the most that they've ever given in the past.
Did we have any obligations tied to the DNR helping us out with this?
With fishing pier,
Yeah,
no, we'll want to make sure we get a nice ADA concrete sidewalk down to the ramp for certain, regardless of anything with the rec trail. And beyond that, I think we have some options if we want to leave the site as is, put a dirt path, make a grass path, or put a paved path.
A thought on, maybe starting out on, with the gravel around now, but maybe, put in for connecting our Egan Avenue path that goes to Lake Madison to down towards City Hall.
Yeah.
And then in the future, and that, that may make it eligible in that for,
Yeah.
going from gravel to blacktop.
Yep, I agree completely, and regardless of whether we would go from gravel to blacktop, I think that'd be the connectivity that they would probably like to see if you have a couple assets, an existing trail system that you're expanding upon. I think that would rate quite high. For that path, we would have to, we would have to obtain a couple of easements, so that'd be something that staff can do over the next year before we have to apply again.
Guess I'd be okay with a gravel path around it to start with. I mean, it'd be nice to just have a path.
yeah.
Honestly.
I know people are getting excited to go out there and check out the fishing.
Yeah.
So.
So some support for budgeting for a gravel path, or
Do we design that to be a base for the asphalt then in the future? I mean, with
yeah, we could look at
a
that.
base to build on,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, I don't know if Pierre or Ryan have more thoughts on.
Yeah, I would say that, we build it for future asphalt, that would be the best route.
I think, yeah.
Maybe even add just a little bit every year. Eventually make it all the way around.
Do we need emergency access to it or anything for an ambulance, or how's it all set up for?
I could look into that, I don't think we would need to, but I don't know. Good question. Okay, well, we can do some cost estimates to bring forward during the budget meetings on what a gravel path might look like.
And there's a little island, out there. Maybe if we budget for, going around the north side and not at least that far, year one, and then, depending on what the dollars can have.
Yeah, our first application for the recreation trail program actually included a request to replace the bridge and kind of go out to that little island, and that added on a substantial amount of costs, and we removed that from the application, knowing that it was already a tight process. I haven't been out to the current bridge to know if it's in good shape to leave or if it's something we want to remove to avoid any liability if it's getting to be old.
I haven't either. Anyone else in here?
I don't wanna completely lose track of trying to apply for that funding too. I think, maybe we come in at 40 or 50% of the project costs or something like that. So I think I would suggest staff looking at multiple options.
Can we only have one application, or can we apply for around the pond and? the
Do make two
connection
separate
and
applications.
3, 4, that would.
Yeah, I would speculate that we could. I think the connectivity applications will rank higher. And based on the master plan we have for recreation trails, now we have lots of opportunities to build trails in town, so. I think as long as we keep at least one application in the year to see what we get, we'll be good. Anything else? Okay, our last pillar is investing in city workforce. This is also one that I feel like we spent a lot of effort. Our department heads completed a working genius training this quarter, continuing to provide for professional development. Our employee committees are continuing to meet, and those employee committees are on the topics of engagement, benefits, insurance, and safety. An employee portal has now been developed and implemented, so that's gonna be available to employees through the website as well as through our new mobile app. And that's providing employees with access to all of our policies, benefit information, job descriptions, employee directory, and more. Not all of those items are up on the portal yet, but we plan to continue to develop that so that more resources are available as time goes on. And finally, I added a new strategy to the strategic plan, so I always say that plan is meant to be a living document, not something that we want to have grow stale, and it can certainly be changing. So we added a new strategy related to developing mission, vision, and values, and progress on that has been through the creation and implementation of our core values. So that has been officially rolled out to the public, and at some point, we'll move on to working on a mission and vision statement. That wraps up the updates on our strategic planning process progress over the last quarter. Any other questions, comments?
Questions or comments?
In the right direction.
All right.
You all should have the plan booked, so at any point you flip through that and you see something that we haven't started yet that you'd like to see us start to make work on, just let me know and we can take a look. Thank you.
All right, no other questions. Move on to number 2, infrastructure improvement plan.
All right, so we have a current IIP that we've made great progress on. And so the staff, which I think has been a great collaboration between engineering, utilities, streets, finance, a number of departments, have been working on updating and creating new IIP. This is something that we envision be at least revisited every year, if not substantially updated with more things being added. So, Brian, can you walk us through the plan?
Yeah, like Jameson said, this will be a very much a living document. This will be something that we're constantly changing and improving and updating at least once a year. Just kind of run through what we have here. Page 2 is a proposed utility improvements map. Those would be proposed improvements for 2025. I'll give that the asterisk that there may be some projects that we'll want to push on. This is a pretty aggressive plan for 2025. It's probably something that we need to revise and redo for the final version of this IIP. But those areas in orange would be those identified as our highest priority. Page 3 would be the list of the planned improvements for the next 5 years. And then the overflow would be projects identified as priorities that we would take care of in the future. Those may move up into the 5-year plan, or they may continue to be planned for, years 2030 and beyond. So there could be quite a bit of movement here. You'll note that the green indicates that those are funded projects. Egan Avenue, we haven't decided exactly how that's going to be funded yet. Jameson had mentioned we're applied for SRF. It may become a reality that it's an RD project. We also applied for some transportation alternatives grant. So while that's not solidified, we have that marked in the funded project category. The yellow would be projects to be funded by water and sanitary sewer rate increases. Those preliminary rate increases are shown on the next page, page 4. Again, very preliminary. This could all move around. And then the orange ones are the unfunded. And so that indicates the bypass in 2026, and then a storm sewer comprehensive study. In looking at this, we've determined that we think a storm sewer study would be a very good thing to do. We've dedicated time to doing water studies and some sanitary sewer studies, but we've never done anything with storm sewer, to my knowledge. There's something I've ever been able to find. And I think it's time. I think it's time as we're developing these IIP projects that we not only take into account the water in this, the sanitary, but storm sewer as well. Drainage is a big concern in a lot of areas. Northwest 9th Street, getting that drainage done has been a big boon, but we have other areas, so we would like to, put some attention toward a storm sewer comprehensive study. Page 4, as I mentioned, is the preliminary customer water and sewer rate impact schedule. Now this would be planning to do between $2.25 and $9 million per year. In 2025 through 2028, it would be that $2.25 to $2.5 million. And then in 2029, we'd have a larger planned improvements that would include Egan Avenue South from Southwest 4th Street to Northwest 2nd Street. So that would be a big project that goes through downtown. So that would be the reason for that larger chunk. This would be based on, as the IEP indicates, a debt service based on 3.75 interest in 30-year term. Of course, that is that could fluctuate. And then this also doesn't include any grants or anything like that that we would be hopeful that we could get. But we didn't want to put something in front of you and say we plan to get this number of grants and not know if that is a real reality. So again, this is just kind of meant for conversation's sake at this point. I think it's just important that we develop a roadmap for where we're going in the future. And as Jameson mentioned, this is a collaborative effort. I want to thank Gary, thank Nate and his staff for a lot of work on this, as well as Amy. The only way we could do this is working together and making sure we're all on the same page. So that's why I wanted to bring this IIP to you today in draft form so that we can develop this and modify it in a way that's going to be helpful to the city, helpful to the residents, and then we can kind of do some future planning. Jumping back a little bit to the list, and I had alluded to it on the map. There's a number of those projects that are probably going to move to 2026 or beyond. The reason we left them in 2025 is really to focus on how much of a priority those areas are, how important those are. A number of those projects have been planned for a number of years, and they're the ones that kept getting the can kicked down the road. And so it's come high time that we look at those areas. Probably the most important one that is identified as a project to be funded by water and sanitary sewer rates, and probably one that we want to definitely keep in 2025 is the segment 9. That Northwest 5th and Blanche Avenue intersection is the one where we had that sinkhole earlier this year. So we feel like that's an important project to put on the front burner. The remainder of the yellow projects and the orange project can definitely fluctuate. It's a pretty large number that we have shown there for estimated project costs. And again, we just want this document to be a conversation starter, and appreciate any questions or thoughts you have.
Ryan, what are we gonna do with the Park Creek walls in the Gallery Park?
So that's out to bid. We've been having trouble finding a suitable mason. They have to be qualified through FEMA and through the state. That's very hard to find. There's only a couple in the state. We do have a third individual company that reached out. They have people that work for them that have worked for companies that were qualified in the past. They've done a lot of historic work. And so we're hoping that it's not a long path for them to get on that list of approved contractors. And if they can do that, then we're hopeful that, we would have 3 masons that would now bid that. That's been the concern in the past, but that's out to bid. That's definitely going to be a 2025 project. I don't have a lot of hope that anything will get done yet this fall. There might be some work that they can do, but as far as the stone removal and the tuck pointing and everything, they could set up a heated tent and work all winter, but I just don't know if that's a reality. So it's an option, but I just think we're probably looking at spring. And we will, we'll have to, apply for an extension. I think things look good as far as that goes, but technically our projects were supposed to be done here in November, completely done. So we'll have to file an extension with FEMA. You know, I've prefaced that with them in the past and it sounds positive that they won't have any problem doing that. In fact, the answer I got was, well, why wouldn't we approve it? So. Feel good about that.
Ryan?
Yeah.
Could you just give us a little bit of an update too on the current progress and that, of the riprap and the things that are going on?
Yeah, sure. So site 3 would be north of 7th Street. That area there is. Well, it's more or less done. They've got the sheet piling in now, they've got the riprap place. There's a little bit of modification that they'll need to do. The shape of the channel isn't effective, per se. So they might have to move some riprap around. We'd struggled a little while with getting the correct size riprap. Now that we have that kind of solved, you'll see that project button up, do some seating there, but that one's primarily done. The section through Egan and Hearth Avenue there, work continues on that sheet piling. See the big crane there, that's setting the piling in place, and then they migrate that. That's coming along well. They've got quite a bit more work to do with the riprap there. The shape of that channel, there's supposed to be a bottom, it's what we call a key, where the bottom has a flat shape and then would wing up from there. They're a little bit narrow on that bottom side, so again, pull a lot of those rocks up to the top. And that's their biggest challenge right now, but things are going fine there. They may not finish, in the timeframe they initially thought they might, but things are progressing.
And I've looked at it a couple of different times and one of the things in that I like is the way they've done it, and that is, it allows us also more volume, which is somewhat like a retention pond.
Yeah, and I've gotten quite a few questions about, widening of that, and if it is indeed the same capacity, and it is, it's, we had to submit the paperwork through FEMA to get that approved, and we have to submit what's called a conditional letter of map revision, and that's indicating that there'll be a physical change to the creek. And we showed all the slopes and our size riprap and everything, and that was approved and shows that the flows are the same. And then after the project, we'll have to do a letter of map revision that will show that it was constructed properly, and that we do carry that same flow through there. But I do agree, I think it'll function well. There's been some concern about rocks being washed down the creek. I don't share that. They use this size riprap everywhere.
Yeah.
Have you seen the size of those rocks?
Yeah, they're very large, so. Yeah, we think it'll be a good project. I've also gotten questions from some folks in the community about, is this just the beginning of more segments where we're taking out vertical rock wall and installing riprap channel? And there's no plan to do that, so.
It's not cheap.
Yeah.
So cheap, it's cheaper than trying to reconstruct the walls, and that's how this got approved. It was a least cost alternate that FEMA had approved and State Historic Preservation Office approved. But without that damage, I don't believe they would probably let us do that. We probably want to maintain that historic.
And then another thing in that 5-year plan was the SR 22 and flood mitigation discussed. Good.
Yeah, I should mention, so it's not included as part of this IAP. Neither is the airport, and neither are maintenance activities such as chip seals and such like that. Those could be incorporated into this single document if you'd like. Could certainly do that. We do have a 10-year plan for the airport, and I could certainly fold that into this. And I kind of like keeping that separate, but if you'd like me to show like the chip seals and everything in here, that certainly could be done. We would have good estimates on how much area we want to do every year, but
And keep it in one place, but I don't
yeah.
know if you have to, but.
I don't think that's necessary, but
Yeah.
people keep asking, about flood control.
Yes, yeah, it's a big,
So,
big component, yeah.
other questions or comments?
It's nice to see division on here.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, and that's when I would, I mentioned some of those overflow may work their way up. I'd like to see that one work its way up.
Yeah, you and me both.
We should.
Division, you said?
Yeah,
Oh, it's pretty rough.
From 39.
Plus up and down.
yeah.
You mean, you want to take out the speed control policy?
More speed control.
Do we? do we have any studies or ideas with that, cyber or, Trojan Village up there added? Count traffic on division or traffic counts or any
No,
guesses?
well, you know, it's a well-traveled road already.
I mean, you add a little loop there.
Yeah, and I think once you connect Division Avenue there, I expect there's gonna be quite a bit of traffic that's going through there, so. And we haven't done any traffic counts or, a wild guess as to what they'll be, but. With that many lots, I'm not sure how quickly it'll fill up, but. I think they're pretty aggressive to try to get those marketed and get some houses built up there, so I think that change is gonna come quickly.
And one of the things, that, I've looked at too, and that is continuing 11th Street to Airport Road. Sometime in the future, especially, for DSU and high school activities,
Mhm.
that would give another avenue for traffic to arrive and leave, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to see that interconnection. I'd like to see connection between, the development out by the airport coming over to Antelope Avenue. I don't know if that's something that'll come in the future, but, got a couple of landowners along there. If they can get together and come up with a development plan that, is cohesive, that could get done, but it can be kind of a tough one.
No, very good. Other questions or comments?
I'll emphasize two things, is one, all very much draft, especially when we're looking at the financing and numbers. There's a number of these projects that we could look for additional funding on, and we haven't yet because they're farther down the road or whatever the case may be, but all very preliminary, especially when it comes to the impact study through rates. That's gonna be determined by a lot of factors as we get closer. The second thing I'd emphasize is there was a map that was included in here that shows all of our past projects over the last 20 years. The first 15 of those years, 2005, 2019 is bolded in black. And then the last 5 years from 2020 until today, you can see in a few different color codings. So want to just point that out because you can see there's been a lot done in the last 20 years, but especially a lot done in the last 5 years. When you think about the 15 years versus the last 5 years, been a lot of projects done, especially in the northwest, northeast side of the town. And we've been seeing a lot of positive results from that. I think we've seen water mains, breaks numbers dropping in half. We've seen a lot of less water loss and fewer customer outages. So I think we have to pat ourselves on the back. So thank the commission who was around at the time for approving these and moving forward with them, the staff for supporting those efforts and implementing, and the ones who are there to respond to those outages and the water main breaks. They're certainly happy to see those numbers going down as well. So I think with the flooding that we saw this last spring, we don't know what would happen if these projects wouldn't have been occurred. But I imagine that they would have been a lot worse than they were. It would certainly have not gone any better if not for these projects. So happy to see these projects moving forward and happy to see the next round of projects coming up.
And a lot of positive from the public also,
Yeah,
especially when it's in their neighborhood.
during construction, not so much. After construction.
Right, exactly. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah,
Fewer phone calls.
yeah, on that map, the areas in magenta, the full reconstruction. I had totaled up that area, it's a little over 7 miles of reconstruction, so that's,
How many miles total do we have?
oh, I don't know.
That area, do you know?
About 50 miles.
50.
And that's lane miles, right?
Lane
So,
miles.
yeah. So the fact that all the reconstruction happened in about 5 years, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I do want to apologize, I was late. I found out how quickly I can jog from Kelly's house to the DSU building on Washington Avenue. It's not fast.
Any other questions for Ryan?
Especially when the reminder goes off on your phone.
Yeah, I looked down at my phone, I'm like, oh, wait. Guess I'm running.
Glad you got some exercise today.
Yeah, me
No,
too.
very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to number 3, police department updates.
I'll ask Justin to come up for this. This is something that was requested from the commission, just to get a general update of our police department activities, what we're seeing for calls, and then specifically with our flock, license plate reader cameras that we have in place here. And, I think you'll see a lot of positive things here coming through the police. Justin, go ahead.
Afternoon, everybody. I want to draw your attention to these sheets here. These are our accurate numbers. Found a little bit of a snafu in our accounting, I guess you will. These, on these sheets, these year-end totals here are off. These numbers are accurate, but we had a little bit of a snafu. We started coming up with some different numbers, so did a little dive into that. Our numbers are pretty consistent over the last few years. There is a slight uptick, which is to be expected. We're continuing to expand as a community. DSU is expanding, so we're getting more and more people, so that drives our numbers up. There's nothing that we're seeing that's alarming to us. We seem to be doing fairly well. We did decide a couple of years ago to start a special response team, seeing some increase in the type of calls that we were dealing with, where it would have been beneficial to have them. We currently have 7 team members. 4 of those members are on the police department, to include 3 from the Lake County Sheriff's Office. Those folks get together once a month and do 10 hours of training to stay on top of things, as well as they receive an additional 80 hours of specialized training with other units from across the state. They then bring that back and cross-train the rest of our staff, as well as the rest of the sheriff's office. So we're getting some pretty good training put on there, opening our eyes to new ideas and new concepts and dealing with different situations. So that's always nice to see. As far as our flock cameras, we did have those installed in August of 22. Just a brief refresher, those obviously they take pictures, not video, but just pictures of the rear of vehicles. They're looking for license plates. They're not used for any traffic enforcement, such as speeding or stoplights or stop sign violations, that type of thing. We do audit that on a monthly basis to ensure that the proper use of the system is taking place. And we've had some great success with the system since it's been put in. You can see the stats there, but a number of stolen vehicles have been recovered. We identified a serial rapist out of Sioux Falls for the police department down there. That individual was just recently sentenced to, I believe, 50 years in state pen. So that was a good case. We use them to locate subjects that are wanted from time to time. They've been coming in really handy when it comes to retail theft, which we expected that they would. We've solved a number of cases with the use of those cameras in that aspect. 2024 has seen us use Flock to successfully close 25 cases. So that tells you how well they're being used. Some of the highlights there that are listed, we also had a rather large vandalism recently that we took a broad description of a vehicle, were able to locate the suspect vehicle and had the suspect identified in 10 minutes. So, and I believe that's reaching a positive conclusion. So those are the type of things, that's what we originally looked at that system for, was to save us man hours on the investigative, on the back end of crimes. We knew we didn't have a large stolen vehicle problem in Madison. We do recover one from time to time. We did have a couple of suspects that decided to drive a stolen vehicle to court last fall, and we found them outside the courtroom when they came out of court and took care of that. And recently, as of, it was either 2 or 3 weeks ago now, we had one roll in from, again, Sioux Falls, Lincoln County area. We were able to locate and apprehend that person as well. So the stats for Flock are only kept for 30 days. At the end of 30 days, all the stats on that are deleted. We can go back and see what our officers are searching. We do require them to put in calls for service numbers. So we go back and cross-reference those to make sure they're being used for legitimate purposes. But our data, monthly data is dumped every 30 days. But for the month of August, we pulled it up. There was 1.1 million plate reads in the city of Madison. Of those 1.1 million, there was 373,000 unique plate reads. So that tells you there's 373,000 vehicles, different vehicles that came to Madison. So if I get in my car and I drive to work, I'm gonna probably hit a couple of those cameras on my way to work and on the way home. So those 4 plate reads, but it's only one unique vehicle, just to give you an idea what those stats are. Those numbers probably were inflated due to Prairie Village, our DSU concert, as well as the Egg Bowl. Typical month, we see about a total of 850,000 plate reads. Is where that number kind of hovers, give or take. So I would have had no idea that that number was that high when we installed these cameras, but they seem to be working. In the month of August, we conducted 53 searches on the system. So of those 53 searches, 15 were for training, testing purposes. Not everybody is in the system very often, so folks will come in, we'll sit down, we'll go over some things. We'll train them up when they have new features. We'll train on those features, test on those. So the remaining 38 searches for the month of August actually resolved around 10 cases. And there were 10 different searches. So if we get a suspect vehicle, let's say we're looking for a red sedan and we believe we know the license plate, we may go in and enter a red sedan with the South Dakota license plate, and this is the plate number. So that's gonna be one search. If we don't find what we're looking for, then maybe we get rid of the actual plate number and now we're looking for red sedans. Folks will give us a time frame as to when a crime occurred, and maybe that's 2 hours. If we don't find it within that 2 hours, maybe we double that and we look at a 4-hour window. So every time we change that search parameter, that's gonna show up as an additional search. So that's what you're seeing there. But yeah, the system has worked out fantastically. It's paying dividends around town. So that's what I have for Flock. Does anybody have any questions on the numbers?
How many unique plate reads would you get in a month, on a normal month, would you say? We never, that's what.
I would have to go back and look, but I would say you're probably in the area of like 100 and, I would say it varies between 100 to 140,000, just depending. Yep.
In a town of 7,000.
Yeah. Yep.
So going into this in your planning stage, I mean, I know what your expectations or ideas were. I mean, we've got to be, as far as reads and what you're using it for, exceeding your initial thoughts, correct? Or is that?
Absolutely. Yep. The more we have it, the more unique ways we find to utilize it. We figured it would be a good on retail theft. We knew it was gonna help us on our investigations, but if we have somebody that we have warrants for that doesn't wanna be found, instead of trying to play hide and seek at the house, we can put their license plate number in the system and then we can just locate them and conduct a traffic stop and everybody's safe and go about that way. That was we would have never thought of that when we originally put it in the system. We're assisting more and more agencies all the time. They know that we have them. There are additional communities in South Dakota now that have this system. A number of other agencies are also running a different product or a different vendor, but more and more agencies are going to this after seeing the success that we've had here. And they'll pick up the phone, and if it's a surrounding county, they'll pick up the phone and say, hey, can you search your cameras for X, Y, or Z? We have a domestic that maybe happened in Howard and the subject's wanted. Our guys will go in and they'll punch it into the system and say, has this individual been through our community yet? And if not, we can enter that plate. So if it does enter our community, we'll know right away, and then we can hopefully conduct a traffic stop on it. So yeah, those are just a few of the different ways we're utilizing it.
Will those databases be opened up to the other communities, or does each only own their information?
We can share our information with other agencies and we do. We have a number of agencies across the nation that we're sharing information with. And we have the ability to go look on their stuff if and when we need be. We don't do that very often, but like I said, we had a case where there was a homicide that took place out of our area, but they knew we had the cameras. They reached out to us and said, can you check your local cameras and anybody that you have a partnership with? And so we did that to try and help them solve that. So, yep.
Other questions?
Chief, can you elaborate on the SRT team, like when it was established and maybe how many calls to action they've had?
They were established, I think it was about 3 years ago. And it's been a slow buildup. So as we formed this team, we knew that we were going to have to get them trained up before we sent them out on a call. Right now, to date, we've had them called up on 3 separate incidents where they've been activated. They did have a 4th call out that resolved itself before they were able to get there out in the county. So we've been focusing more on building up our capabilities and getting the equipment we need before we start opening this up. We recently signed a MOU with a few surrounding counties that don't have these capabilities, that if our team is needed, they can call upon us. Typically, as we do with our drone, our drone's been utilized a number of times. Last fall, we got called over to Moody County at 3 a.m. and our drone, I believe, was up in the air for a total of 4 minutes to locate a subject that was hiding in a cornfield. We directed our officers to that scene and they spent more time driving over there and driving back than they did with the drone in the air. So, you know, you just work on those capabilities, you build them up before you really push that product out there. And we have reached a point with our folks in the last 6 to 8 months that we're confident in their ability to do the job, and they've gotten some fantastic training over the last couple of years, so.
Other questions, comments?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very
absolutely.
much.
Anytime anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out.
All right. Number 4, confirm the date for the next planning meeting is Monday, December 9th at noon.
So I just picked that out. It's the last month of the quarter, the second Tuesday at noon. That's where we're meeting today. We just threw that out so that if that works for the group, they can get it on their calendars. Excuse me, I said second Tuesday, I meant second Monday. Yeah, second Monday at noon. So if that works for everybody, we can get that on the calendars.
Yeah.
No,
No, sounds good.
That's perfect.
Anything else?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
We have staff here. I'm just gonna open up. Is there anyone from staff and that has anything that they wanna just mention? Things are going good then. I like that. So, all right, with that,
One more quick
yes.
general question. Current city hall request for proposal, we still working?
Just completed a draft before I came down here.
Perfect. Do you have a timeline or what's your?
I'm hoping to get in the next agenda for you guys to approve to put out. Okay. So it'll be a week from today.
Good.
All right. Then under announcements, our next regular commission meeting will be next Monday, September 16th, 5:30 p.m. right here. So, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Thank you, everyone.
Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Randy.
Yes.